Case straight to the American people, delivering his first Oval Office address as president. Good morning, everybody. We got a packed 3 hours for you. I'm Bill Hemmer, kicking off right now in New York. How you doing? Nice to see you.
And here we go. Good morning, everyone. I'm Sandra Smith. Tonight's address coming as the shutdown stalemate drags on over funding for the border wall. The commander-in-chief will speak on what he is calling a crisis at the southern border as he considers declaring a national emergency and bypassing Congress altogether. Here's Vice President Pence from this morning.
What I expect the president will do tonight is explain to the American people that we have a humanitarian and security crisis at our southern border. He'll explain the need not just to build a wall, which he's determined to do, but also to provide our Border Patrol with additional resources, humanitarian and medical assistance, new technology. But the Democrats need to come to the table and start negotiating.
So every angle begins now. Doug McElway has Democratic reaction on the headlines. Hugo Gurdon on deck with analysis, but we begin with Kevin Corke from the White House there on the North Lawn. Kevin, good morning.
Good morning, my friend. It is fair to suggest that this is a seminal moment in the Trump presidency, as you pointed out, an Oval Office address tonight where he will take his message directly to the American people, talking about this humanitarian and national security crisis along the border. This is clearly an opportunity for him not only to continue to express that message, but again to lay down the message to congressional lawmakers. We're going to have a wall one way or the other. That seems to be the idea. Now, the president made the announcement on Twitter himself, saying yesterday that he was pleased to inform the nation that he would be addressing the humanitarian and security crisis on the southern border. Coming your way Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Obviously, you can watch it here on Fox News Channel. It is an issue, Bill, that has vexed presidents for decades. But the vice president this morning said succinctly, this administration, and specifically this president, is going to tackle the problem head on.
The American people will hear from the president tonight that we have a crisis and we have to address it. And the time has come for the Democrats to come to the table and start negotiating, not just to end the partial government shutdown, but to address the humanitarian and security crisis.
I had a chance to attend an important briefing with the vice president yesterday over at the EEOB, and he said in addition to the drugs and the thousands of arrests of people with previous criminal records crossing our southern border, in addition to all of that, Bill, this is a humanitarian crisis with tens of thousands of unaccompanied minors also pouring across the border. Something has to change, and they feel like it has to happen right now, Bill.
Okay, now congressional leaders apparently offering a deal to avoid the shutdown. These stories are running parallel with each other. Kevin, what do we have on that?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. The vice president also told us that, listen, he made a compromise offer by way of the president in writing to Senate Democrats, and they simply refused to even entertain that offer. And we're also told that it was a compromise offer, which is to say it didn't involve, say, $5.7 billion for the president's proposed border wall. But they didn't bite, and that's what happens. Let me take you back to Twitter. The vice president also had a chance to share a picture of that briefing that he conducted yesterday. He said that he told the press about the crisis at the border. Dems are refusing to negotiate. He said the president and our team are working to end the crisis, secure the border, open the federal government. Time for the Democrats' leadership to come back to the table.
We could resolve this in a matter of hours if the Democrats will come to the table and start negotiating in good faith. And the American people also deserve to know, on the very first day of this partial government shutdown, the president sent me to Capitol Hill to make a good faith offer that would have avoided the shutdown altogether. Now we're 3 weeks in, and tonight the American people, the president will take his case directly to the American people.
We'll see what congressional lawmakers have to say after the speech. We're looking forward to having that as part of our analysis tonight here on Fox News Channel, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, the speech. And, of course, we expect excerpts ahead of it. And as I get them, I promise to pass them along. But, Bill, for now, back to you.
Good deal. We'll all be watching tonight. Thank you, Kevin Corke, leading our coverage today from the White House. Thank you, sir. Sandra.
Now to Capitol Hill, where the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer are demanding equal airtime for Democrats to respond to the president's address. Doug McElway is live in Washington with more on this. Doug, any decision yet by the networks?
Yes, Sandra, just in the past few minutes, we've got some breaking news for you. NBC News has said that it will carry a response to the president's address tonight. Informally, CNN indicated earlier that it, too, will carry a response, even though it does not know who will deliver that response. It is not uncommon for at least two of the networks to come to a common decision and then the rest to join in before anything is officially announced. So in a joint statement, Speaker Pelosi and Senate Minority Leader Schumer tweeted earlier, now that the television networks have decided to air at real Donald Trump's address, which, if his past statements are any indication, will be full of malice and misinformation, Democrats must immediately be given equal time. Instead, at real Donald Trump is still demanding that American taxpayers pay at least $5.7 billion for his wall, which can't pass either chamber of Congress. And of course, Mexico is not paying for the wall. Given the gravity of the situation, with the partial government shutdown now well into its second week and 800,000 government workers coming up to a first full pay period without compensation, that equal time, or at least some Democratic response time, it was a foregone conclusion in most people's estimation. The president's Oval Office address, the first of his presidency, is only set for 8 minutes, so there is not a huge loss of commercial airtime at stake here. Another reason for the equal time, the sheer divided opinion of the parties, which suggests no imminent resolution is at hand. Here's California Democratic Senator Kamala Harris on why she thinks the president wants to speak to the nation tonight.
The president is holding it up because of his vanity project, which is this wall, at taxpayers' expense and at the expense of hundreds of thousands of workers who are working every day without being paid.
And then there's the Democratic opposition to the wall itself.
This idea that they need $5 billion, 5.7, which they haven't even sent us a plan for until yesterday, we're looking at it now, is unrealistic. We want the symbol of America to stay as the Statue of Liberty, not a big concrete wall.
Well, the latest concession the White House has made is that it will not be a concrete wall, but a steel barrier. Republicans say Democrats simply want to oppose this president for the sake of opposition.
The political crisis here in Washington, where Ms. Pelosi and Senator Schumer simply want to beat President Trump. They want to deny him what he's asking for, and they want the political benefit among their base for having done so. If this were really about looking to find a solution, it's really there staring us in the face.
And lastly, some analysts are calling for a several-minute delay in the president's address so that his facts can be checked. But fact-checking is something the networks do and have done routinely for any presidential address, delayed or not. Sandra, back to you.
Doug McKelway in Washington, thank you.
It's kind of our job, isn't it? For more, Hugo Gurdon, Washington Examiner editorial director. How you doing, Hugo? Good morning to you.
Very well.
Nice to see you.
Well.
I don't think the setting can be overstated. It's the Oval Office, first time as president. How does he make his case?
Yeah, Bill, that's exactly right. He's using his first Oval Office address to ramp up his public diplomacy, his public messaging on this. And a lot of his supporters would say that's not before time. He was somewhat criticized for not taking advantage of the Democrats' absence during Christmas and New Year to really make the case, but now he appears to be doing so. And I think he's going to be able to make a pretty strong case. The Democrats themselves have been talking about a humanitarian crisis on the border for the past weeks or months. They will disagree that there's a national security crisis, but when there are a minimum of 11 or 12 million people in the country illegally, many of whom came in via the southern border, it's not difficult for the president to say this is something that really must be addressed and not kicked down.
So
the can
you would
mustn't be kicked down
argue
the field.
then, you talk about the humanitarian crisis, you talk about the drugs too that are coming across the border, too, is that right?
Yeah, I think he's going to talk about drugs. He's going to talk about criminals. He's going to talk about the fact that, there are families that are arriving at the border, and, it is something that the federal government has to deal with. And instead of just sort of, allowing the crisis to continue and to fight, the Democrats have in the past voted billions and billions of dollars, tens of billions of dollars, unanimously in the Senate, but not in the House, for what they called enhanced fencing. That's pretty much what the current administration, what President Trump is willing to accept on the wall, the slatted steel fencing. So there isn't really a dispute about what is needed here. The Democrats have actually accepted this in the past. What they want to do is inflict a defeat on the president on his core promise to the American people.
In the meantime, the Democrats are arguing, let's go ahead and sign the spending bills.
Right.
One of which would keep the Department of Homeland Security at the current funding level up until February, so you would debate that over the next 3 or 4 weeks. But based on what we've seen over the past 20 days or so, in all likelihood, that debate would not change. It would still be a stalemate a month from now.
Yeah.
Do you see it that
Yeah,
way?
I think that's right. I mean, really, the Republican presidents have been treated like Lucy treats the Charlie Brown over the past 30 years. You know, the Democrats whip the ball away and presidents fall down. 1986, there was a compromise which was an amnesty for illegal immigrants and border security. The amnesty happened, the security didn't. And I think it's very likely that the president will not go along with this. He's not going to say, okay, sure, we'll fund the government, and then we'll negotiate at the same time over the wall. He's going to say, no, we're going to go on. We're going to keep this shutdown going until you agree to fund something which you've in any case agreed to fund before.
Thank you, Hugo. Hugo Gurdon setting the table for us, a bit of analysis of Washington. There'll be a lot of that tonight, won't there? Thank you, Hugo. We will have a lot more on the battle over border security in a moment. A reaction from Democratic Senator Joe Manchin out of West Virginia. He's here in 20 minutes at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time, so stand by on that.
And you can watch the president's address right here on Fox News Channel tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern. And, of course, this is going to be the big moment where the president takes his message directly to the American people.
We shall be there, and we'll see whether or not there are surprises in the address based on the president's strategy and how they've been huddling over the weekend. So stand by on all that tonight. Meanwhile, the president considering bypassing Congress altogether, declaring a national emergency to get funding for the wall. But does he have the legal authority to do that? We'll talk to former U.S. Assistant Attorney Andy McCarthy. He's on deck live, coming up to answer that, Sam.
Plus, Senator Marco Rubio sounding off after freshman Congresswoman Rashid Tlaib stirs up controversy yet again, this time for suggesting the U.S. cares more about Israel than the American people. Democrat Senator Joe Manchin will be here to react to that.
Another alert happened this morning. White House National Security Advisor John Bolton appearing to get a snub from the leader of Turkey after the president, Erdogan, refuses to meet with him there. What could that mean for the president's plan to pull U.S. troops out of Syria? We will examine it from all angles coming up shortly, right here.
He's going to lay out the facts and figures of what he considers to be humanitarian and security crisis at the border.
Is he going to talk about the national emergency aspect of it?
What he has said about that is that he is considering it. He has never committed to it. White House counsel's office is researching the legal implications of it. There are probably some people who want him to declare it so that Congress, again, can fail to do its job. The Congress and the courts have failed to do their job.
There's Kellyanne Conway last night with Laura with a glimpse of White House strategy. He could declare it a national emergency. He could use money in the military, divert it for border security. And the other side could challenge all of it in court. Andy McCarthy, former assistant U.S. attorney, Fox News contributor. How you doing, sir? The code is 2808. That's a law that allows him to declare national emergencies. He could say it's drugs. He could say it's a humanitarian crisis. You think it's a stupid law. Despite that, do you think he will do that?
Well, the problem, Bill, is that our code is sort of strewn with a lot of these laws that enable the president to do what Congress should do, which is, as Kellyanne Conway was just saying, step up to the plate and legislate when there's an actual national emergency. So, you know, when Congress isn't diverting and delegating its authority to the bureaucracies in order to have them do their job of legislating, they're delegating the authority to the president, and the law is strewn with this. The big question is, if the president declares an emergency, the statutes don't seem to open the door to the court second-guessing the president on that question. On the other hand, there always being another hand when we're talking about the law, President Obama put over 300 judges on the court in his 8 years. Some of them are progressive activists. And it seems to me, especially in the area of immigration and things that touch on immigration, they've been very aggressive about replacing the president's judgment with their own judgment.
There's a little bit of breakup of the signal, though. I hope it stands for the next 3 minutes, okay? Because I'm very keen on your thoughts.
Okay.
You told our producers you believe these are stupid laws. Why do you believe that?
Yeah, I do. Well, because I think that in modern America, you know, we're not talking about the 1800s anymore, right, where it's hard for Congress to convene. If you actually have an authentic emergency and emergency conditions in the country, there's no reason that Congress can't immediately convene, declare an emergency, and give the president, through its statutory lawmaking power, the authorities he needs to deal with the emergency. And instead, what you have is laws that presume that the president can just take it on himself unilaterally to declare an emergency. That's not the way this government is supposed to work.
That's why the legal system
temptation
can come in and suggest that, you know, the action the president takes is legal or is not. But here's a way out of this, Andy. You've got two major stories. You've got a government shutdown, and you got a crisis at the borders. The president's going to frame it tonight. So how do you get out of it? You pass or you sign the 6 or 7 remaining spending bills, of which one is Department of Homeland Security. What is that, $1.3 billion, $1.6 billion at the current levels? That's not enough to get your wall. So you declare the national emergency. You move the money from the Army Corps of Engineers, of which, according to the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post, there's at least $10 billion. There might be more than $20 billion in that fund. It carries over year to year. You allocate the money. You accept the court challenge, and you wait for the U.S. Supreme Court to make a decision. In the meantime, you reopen the government, and you have staked your claim on the wall and how you will accomplish both.
Yeah, Bill, I think that's right. I also think the legal challenge is going to come in about 5 minutes. So you're quite right. He could do this all. He could do this all tonight, and he could pull this off. My beef, and I'm not a political guy, right? I'm a legal guy, but I think if the president was going to shape public opinion on this, he should have done that long ago. I think waiting until the crisis is here is not a great idea. But at the same time, he is the president. He does have the bully pulpit. And if he does a good job tonight, and I expect he will do a good job tonight, he can move public opinion, which will put great pressure on the Democrats to respond, and will give him the opportunity, I think, to do the kind of thing that you're prescribing.
We'll see.
But the court challenge is coming.
Right on. Andy, stand by.
The court challenge is coming immediately.
I agree with you. 5 minutes, maybe 5 seconds. But I think that's the reason why he mentioned the DACA ruling last Friday. He's waiting for the Supreme Court to issue a ruling on what President Obama declared several years ago. And if he gets if Obama wins on that DACA bill at the U.S. Supreme Court, the president feels that he's got the green light to do this. So stand by. We'll see what happens, okay? All opinions are valid now because we don't know what's going to happen. Andy McCarthy, thank you for your time. Come on back, okay?
Thanks, Bill.
You bet. 20 past. Sandra?
Well, it has been one of the Trump administration's top priorities, working to get drug prices lower for American families. So will Congress act, and how? Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar will join us next on that. Plus, passengers shocked as a woman has an epic airport meltdown after her flight gets delayed for 20 hours.
Video capturing the moment a JetBlue passenger loses it at the check-in counter. Watch here. Back from Fort Lauderdale on Sunday in full view, as you can. All right, kill it. She can even be heard calling the man a rapist and saying she's got a gun. JetBlue reportedly denied her entry because she was intoxicated. So that's a sad scene right there.
Stressful.
Yep. But sometimes you just want to say, Smitty, get me out of here, right? I mean, you want to get on board that plane.
Seems like an extreme case there, but it can be difficult. It can be difficult.
Can be a challenge.
We'll leave it at that. All right, well, prescription drug costs are going up, but there's plenty of momentum for change in Washington. President Trump has vowed to fight rising costs, and several lawmakers have named lowering prices one of their top priorities. Alex Azar is Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services. He joins us now. Mr. Secretary, wonderful to have you on the program this morning for an issue that affects all Americans, many families dealing with the rising costs of drugs. It's difficult. It's challenging. What is the administration doing about it?
Yeah, so President Trump has done more than any president in history to tackle the issue of drug costs. You know, he's approved historic levels of generic drugs. These are low-cost alternatives to brand drugs. That saves $26 billion in the first 2 years of his term alone. He's ending foreign free riding off of American investment in R&D. That's $17.5 billion in savings from the first 5 years of that program that we'll be doing. He's freed up pharmacists to tell patients about lower-cost alternatives for their drugs and brought new negotiating tools to Medicare programs. So across the board, historic action to blow up the status quo here.
But as far as actual results and drug prices coming down, the president has said that he expected a significant decrease in drug prices. That unfortunately has not been the case. The Wall Street Journal is reporting that over 36 drug companies rose prices on their prescription drugs an average of 6.3%. This, by the way, is a piece from the Wall Street Journal, wrote a piece titled "The Drug Price Control Threat." It started out for all the nasty partisan divisiveness in Washington. It's often worth worrying more when both parties agree. It actually takes on the idea that a lot of Democrats are aligned with Republicans and the president on this issue. But there is a concern about what this means for research and development, and as the piece points out, hope for a cure for some families looking for a cure for Alzheimer's in their lifetime. So what does this call by the president and a bipartisan call to lower drug prices do for research and development?
Well, Sandra, the president's been really clear. Prices of drugs need to be coming down, not going up. Now, the price increases that just happened, these are lower than have happened in past years, and that's real savings to American people. It's fewer drugs, it's lower increases, but they're still not acceptable. And what's happening is these drug companies keep increasing their list price so that they can funnel more money to middlemen, these pharmacy benefit managers, as kickbacks to keep their drug in a preferred status on the drug formulary. We've got to tackle these incentives or we're going to keep seeing increasing list prices. Now, we're making progress there, but the president has been clear. This has to stop. Drug prices must start coming down, not going up, and we will work with Democrats, we will work with Republicans to make that happen.
I just wonder if you can address some of the individual numbers that we're seeing here. Prices of more than 250 prescription drugs went up. As I noted, the average 6.3%. Total spending by the government, consumers, insurers on prescription drugs was $333 billion in 2017 alone. Now, you've heard a lot of plans thrown out there by members of Congress. Elizabeth Warren is one of them. She says that the government should step in to correct certain market failures like shortages or a sudden price hike. Her bill directs the government to produce a generic insulin. Does the president agree with Elizabeth Warren, for example, on some of these issues?
Well, that proposal is a solution in search of a problem. You know, socializing the means of production is really rarely a good answer to solving any problem in the marketplace. The generic industry in the United States is a gem of our system. It is highly competitive. It is low cost. It delivers hundreds of billions of dollars of savings to the American people in our programs every year. Sure, are there occasional dislocations in manufacturing where generic companies left alone with a product and able to increase price? Yes, and that's why the president has been the first president ever to call for importing competing generic drugs from other countries when a generic manufacturer price gouges here in the United States.
It's going to be fascinating to watch. It's really a bipartisan effort. A lot of agreement across the aisle on this issue. We'll see where it goes in the new year because those prices continue to go up. Secretary Azar, thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Right about 9:30, top story of the day. You know this. The president will make his border security pitch directly to the American people from the Oval Office tonight, prime time. How are Democrats reacting today? We'll talk to Senator Joe Manchin on that coming up live in a moment. And right in the middle of this shutdown battle, the governor of California, newly sworn in, vowing, quote, a sanctuary for all in his state. We'll get a live report on what he said coming up next.
Together, let us build a house stronger than the coming storms, yet open to the world. A house that provides shelter to all who need it and sanctuary to all who seek it, where opportunity abounds for all who will work for it.
Today trading underway, and check that out, huh? You're going to like that. Up about 300 at the open here as we enter a day of more trade talks between the U.S. and China. The president sent out a tweet about an hour ago saying things are going really well with China so far, so we'll see how that goes. If you were watching Neil Cavuto yesterday on Fox Business, he had Carl Icahn on. We were talking about this.
Yeah.
Carl Icahn, well-known investor. He's made billions, right, on the market and other companies across the U.S. and around the world. He just threw his hands up in the world, basically, on the phone and said, I can't figure it out. I can't tell you what's going on. 2-point moves one way, 2-point moves the other.
That's a fair response at this point. It's confusing and all over the place.
Anyway, up for the moment, 300 points. We'll follow it for you throughout the day here. Okay, 9:34 now.
President Trump taking his pitch for border security directly to the American people today with his first televised Oval Office address tonight. Let's bring in West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin. Senator, great to have you on the program this morning. Thanks for being here.
Good morning, Senator. Good to be with you.
What are your expectations for this moment tonight?
Well, I'm anxiously awaiting to see what he has to say and how we can move forward and get out of this this shutdown that we're in. We had 800,000 great workers who are depending on a paycheck, want to go back to work. I've got 12,000 West Virginians. But, Sandra, on top of that, we have a lot of kids that's going to go without, food, basic necessities of life. So the quicker we can get out of this, the better we are.
The president says it's a crisis. It's a national security issue. Do you agree with the urgency that he's placing on this?
Here's the thing about it. You can argue until the cows come home, but the bottom line is over the years, Congress has given away a lot of authority to the executive branch. So if that's wrong, then they ought to take it back. But if the president declares an emergency, he has a right to do that. And it'll probably go to the courts and be contested. If that gets us out of a shutdown, then so be it. I want to get out of this shutdown. I voted for border security. I would be very hopeful and very, very glad if the president would look at the 2013 immigration reform bill. It does everything I believe he wants done. Protects our border, secures it, gets rid of the bad people that came for the wrong reason, keeps them out because we secure the border. And the people that came here for the right reason, but the wrong way, gives them a pathway forward, a very long one and a very arduous one, but it gives them a pathway to be productive in our country. But, the base has got to give him some leadway here to make this work because we have to negotiate. That's the art of the deal.
I know you've suggested that in the past. Do you still think that's the answer?
I definitely think it's the answer. I think that basically we have a major problem that causes the border problem that we have identified and the president's identified, and that's an immigration problem. If there's not a pathway forward, if there's not a legal pathway forward, and the people that come here because it's the only chance they have, and right now asylum, we're being overrun by asylum seekers. We don't have enough personnel, enough judges to process this. We've got kids walking 3,000 and 4,000 miles. It's ridiculous. We should be protecting them in their own countries through our embassies. Expand our embassies to where a person who's seeking asylum can go there for protection. They can be vetted to see if they qualify. Be brought to our state, our country, safely then. There's many ways that we can all do this. I would like to think the president is really sympathetic and empathetic towards this approach.
Well, the president wonders, as you often hear him say, whether or not Democrats want border security. He says they don't. To that you say what?
Well, we voted, Mr. President, in 2013 in the Senate. I can't speak for the House, but I can speak for the Senate because in 2013, 68 senators, Democrats and Republicans working together, put a piece of major, major reform, the first of its kind, so extensively. Everything was based around border security. My Republican friends and colleagues put that together, John Hoeven and Bob Corker. We put $42 billion plus, and it was more agents, it was more technology, it was drones, it was security, it was fencing, it was secured gates, it was everything that was needed, and we should be listening to the professionals, the Custom Border Patrol people who know what it takes to secure our border.
Well, I just wonder how you think this is all going to end before I move on.
Well, this impasse has got to break. The president, he's written a book, The Art of the Deal. We're to the point now where there's a deal to be made.
And you think it's up to him?
Well, I think he has to basically show signs because Mitch McConnell has not showed any indication that he's going to move unless he gets a sign from the president. This would be something I can accept, and we'll go ahead and move forward. And the president has to give that signal to them for it to happen the way I understand it. Tonight he'll give his approach and he'll give his reasonings for what he's doing, what he wants done. I'm sure there's going to be a Democrat rebuttal and basically where they stand. We have 6 bills right now before us. Now, I've told the President, we spoke before about this. So, Mr. President, you're not going to get another chance with a Democrat-controlled House right now to get the 6 bills as far as appropriation bills that fund 90% of our government for the next year the way you have them right now. And that should not be held as a leverage or a bargaining chip. I think that hopefully we can move on from that and basically truly look at immigration reform. I'm hoping that's what we can do.
I want to ask you about this this Middle East security bill, because there's been a bit of controversy surrounding this involving a freshman congressman, Rashida Tlaib, who I know you've weighed in on in recent days over some profanity she used when calling for the president's impeachment. Did you want to say something on that before I bring up this latest?
Well, no, that's in our civility. I mean, in our country, that type of uncivility, really, in those type of dialogue and wording, it's not something that I'm accustomed to. It's not something that I would ever use. It's not the way I was raised in West Virginia. It's not what we teach in West Virginia. How you basically have a dialogue, a respectful way of disagreeing. That's just not what you do.
Would you like to see your party leaders speak out against that?
They should speak out. Everyone should speak out of it. Everyone should speak out against that type of language being used against any other former colleague or any person that's basically held with responsibility of leading our country. Well, my goodness, that's just not tolerated.
The latest controversy from her was this tweet. They forgot what country they represent. She wrote, "This is the U.S. where boycotting is a right and part of our historical fight for freedom and equality. Maybe a refresher on our U.S. Constitution is in order. Then get back to opening up our government instead of taking our rights away." Your colleague, Senator Marco Rubio, tweeted a response. "This dual loyalty canard is a typical anti-Semitic line. Hashtag BDS isn't about freedom and equality. It's about destroying hashtag Israel. And if boycotting Israel is constitutionally protected, then boycotting companies that boycott Israel is also constitutionally protected." There has been a continued back and forth since then. Tlaib has responded to him. I just wanted to get your response as that seems to continue.
Well,
finally.
I'm a co-sponsor with Marco on the BDS bill. We don't have a better ally than Israel. We've never had a better ally. We don't have a better economic trading partner than Israel. And basically, anti-Semitism can't be tolerated in any way, shape, or form. And I'm going to defend Israel every way and every time I can. With that being said, people have a right and a freedom and economically, if it's a bad deal, they don't want to be in business or whatever. But basically, they're doing this truly as anti-Semitism, and it cannot be accepted. And I'm going to support the BDS bill that we have supported, and I've co-sponsored with Marco.
Is there truly an effort by Democrats to stop any vote in the Senate until the government reopens?
I respect where they're coming from. Here's what they're saying, and my colleagues have called me, and we've talked about this. They come from states that's an awful lot of harm are being done and an awful lot of anger within the constituency groups of this thing being shut down. And can't we at least bring them to where we can get an impasse on this and move forward? So they're thinking about basically not allowing any type of other piece of legislation until we vote on the 6 bills. I want to vote on the 6 bills. I have no problem at all. But I'm not going to cut my nose off to spite my face and not support the BDS and support Israel.
Got it. And that is where you stand on the issues this morning. Senator Joe Manchin, great to have you on. Thank you.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Quickly here, the tide has been rolled, Sandra. The tide has turned. Clemson stands up and takes a bow. They blew out Alabama in the national championship game. How about that interception early on? 44 yards for 347 yards, 3 touchdowns in victory. Here's another one that the Tigers came 347 yards, 3 touchdowns in victory. Here's another one that the Tigers capture second national championship in 3 years. One. I don't know. A lot of people have picked that one.
I'm in the
I was one of them, though.
Oh,
I got a dollar off of Jimmy over there.
That was not with me.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Good job.
Your debts are paid.
Meanwhile, we've got this breaking news from overseas. What is the future for U.S. troops in the Middle East? John Bolton and Mike Pompeo are there, and Israel Ambassador Danny Danon will join us next.
Also, after months of pressure, a woman in jail for murder in a complex case was granted clemency. So what changed her fate?
Today is an amazing day, and to God be the glory. It's about Centoria today, and it's about this amazing moment and what it represents for so many. Hope, hope, hope has come alive again.
Overseas as we speak, National Security Advisor John Bolton's in Turkey, hit a bit of a snag. He left without meeting with the Turkish president. There are questions from many about the future for U.S. troops from the Middle East. Israeli Ambassador to the United Nations, Danny Danon, is with me in studio. And, sir, good morning to you.
Good morning, Bill.
So John Bolton was in Israel over the weekend. Now he was just in Turkey as well. In the meantime, you got Mike Pompeo in Cairo, Egypt. There's a lot of movement on a lot of different levels. Is the U.S. staying in its current role in the Middle East, or are we leaving? What do you think?
Ambassador Bolton just met Prime Minister Netanyahu and discussed all the issues. We care about the Iranians. The Iranians are not going anywhere. They are still in Syria, and the U.S. will decide eventually when to pull out, how to pull out, but the Iranians are not going anywhere. They are deploying more forces into Syria,
because
more funding.
Your concern, without showing a detailed map here, on behalf of Israel, is that Iran could work more through the country of Syria. Let me just finish with the question here. The Turkish president wants to take out the Kurds in Syria. Well, the Kurds in Syria have helped us take out ISIS, and in turn kept Israel safe along the way. So what is the future for that region, and how are you feeling about your northern border?
Look what happened in Lebanon. The Iranians took over this small country, and only 2 months ago we exposed a network of tunnels infiltrating our border in Israel. They want to do the same in Syria. They want to take over Syria. They want to push everybody out of Syria, stay there, and build a hub for terrorism. We cannot allow it. We will not allow it. We will attack anytime we will see a threat to Israel in Syria. We will attack the Iranians. We proved it in the past.
If the president wants to take U.S. forces out of Syria, saying the job has been done, and he's made his case to the American people that we're not going to stay forever in these countries as we have in the past, what would be your message to President Trump right now?
We work very closely with the administration. We know how to protect ourselves. We never ask the Americans to come and fight for Israel. We have a strong force to protect Israel. It is an American decision to decide about it. By the way, when you look at the numbers, you have only 2,000 American troops today in Syria. If you compare it to the Iranians, they have more than 80,000 people. Most of them are proxies. They are paying Pakistanis, Iraqis to fight in Syria. You have about 5,000 Iranian troops there. So it's not about the numbers, it's about being involved. And our message is that with the U.S. or without the U.S., we will not allow the Iranians to take over Syria.
How did you react 2 or 3 weeks ago when the president said we're leaving?
We respect the decision of the president. It's not affecting our security. It's affecting more. It's not. It's affecting more the role of the U.S. in the region. We know that for the U.S. it's important to be involved in the region. But for us, the issue of Iran is a crucial issue. That's why we bring it up in every meeting, and we will continue to push this issue.
I know you do. Sir, thank you, and I hope you come on back, okay?
Thank you very much, Bill.
Complicated matters, and the waters are deep, as you well know.
Thank you very much,
Bill. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you.
All right, Sandra, what's next?
Meanwhile, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un in Beijing. Could it be a precursor to a second summit between Kim and President Trump? Plus, an unusual visitor to a hospital in Alaska.
I don't need no doctor, 'cause I know what's ailing me.
Kim Jong-un arriving in Beijing for a 4-day visit with Chinese President Xi Jinping. It could serve as an opportunity to coordinate strategy if Kim and President Trump do have a second summit. Greg Palcott's live from our London bureau. Greg, what more do we know about today's meetings?
It's a bit sketchy, but we're getting some details about what could be, Sandra, a very important meeting between Kim Jong-un and Chinese President Xi. Kim, his wife, and a whole bunch of officials left from Pyongyang by that special armored train and arrived in Beijing today. South Korea media reports say that Kim and Xi met for 1 hour on Tuesday, and then the group had dinner. They say that one of the aims of the talks was, and this is crucial, to, quote, coordinate strategy between North Korea and China ahead of a possible second Trump-Kim summit. This also comes, remember, Sandra, after last week's New Year's address by Kim. He said if things don't work out between North Korea and the U.S., they look for another way forward, maybe China. Remember, this is the 4th summit between these two leaders just in the past 10 months. Certainly, by the way, there is increasing chatter about another Trump-Kim summit. Just in the past 2 days, we've been seeing reports about officials from the U.S. and North Korea meeting in Vietnam, possibly looking at that as a site for some kind of a future meeting, maybe in the next couple of months. All this comes, however, Sandra, as talks between the U.S. and North Korea regarding denuclearization are, in a word, stalled, including no top-level meetings, for example, between Secretary of State Pompeo and North Korean officials. That would be necessary for any kind of planning for any summit. One final note, Sandra, today, allegedly the 35th birthday of Kim Jong-un, and there is no word from Chinese officials whether there was a cake after that dinner tonight in Beijing. Back to you.
Got it. All right, Greg Palcott, thank you.
President Trump getting ready to take that border security message pitched directly to the American people. His first Oval Office address as president goes down in prime time. So what does he say? Governor Mike Huckabee on how the president